So we looked at some operators. So what if I did this? What do you think will happen now if I put Z here? Yeah, it's going to multiply. Okay. So we have the the big four: add, subtract, multiply, divide. We also do this. Anyone care to hazard a guess what? So it's a percentage symbol, and the operator is called mod. Does anyone care to guess what that would return? So mod divides and returns the remainder. So it should be 1. Oh, wait. X. Oh, mod. So if we did it the other way around, 6 divided by 5. 1. Right? Because 6 divided by 5 is 1 with 1 remainder, and so it gives you the remainder. So that seems like not very useful, but it does come in handy every once in a while. Okay. So that's some basic variable stuff. Okay? Basically, we define these little bins, and then we put stuff in it. Okay? So let's actually take a look at, I'm going to show you some tools in Chrome. There's equivalent tools in Firefox, and I think even in IE now, that allows us to, so we need to be able to inspect and debug our program. We need to understand what's going on, because what will happen is you'll program some code and it won't work, and you need to figure out why. Okay? So what we'll do is we'll go down to Tools and then JavaScript Console, and what that'll give us, oh, looks like my browser crashed. Okay. So I'm going to go to Tools, JavaScript Console. Did I just hide it? Where'd it go? Hello? Oh, here we go. JavaScript Console. So what we can do, there's a couple of things. I'm going to show you more and more stuff in this console. It is quite indispensable if you're doing anything on the web. So what we can do is look at our sources, and we can, so these are all of our files here. We can go into our script file and see, so this is our code. And what we can do is we can insert what's called a breakpoint. So see how I put a little blue dot there? So now when I refresh my code, so see it says paused in debugger. So it's running through the code, and it stopped. It froze in where I marked it in my JavaScript. Okay? And now what we can do, so there's a bunch of stuff over here. So see here, look, it says variable, no wait, where are our global variables? Scope variables. Well, we don't want to look through all this list. So what we can do is hover over our variables, and it will give us the value at this point in the program. So see, we've assigned 10 to my first variable, so it equals 10. So x, we haven't actually executed this line yet, so it's undefined. Right? It hasn't been given a variable. So what we can do, see there's these little controls here? So if we hit play, it'll just continue on as normal. But what we want to do is we want to step over the next function call. So that means it's going to run the next line. So we can click that and see how the line went down 1. So now if we inspect x, now x equals 6. Now what is y going to equal right now? If I hover over y, what will it say? Undefined, because we haven't defined it yet. We haven't hit that line. We're frozen. The browser is frozen. So we're going to go one more. Now y obviously equals 5. And z is undefined. Okay? And we can keep clicking through. Okay? And we can witness, because obviously when it runs in real time, it's way too fast for us to see what's going on. So this is a way for us to slow down the program so we can see exactly what's happening. Okay? Okay. So that's just a little quick introduction to the JavaScript console. Okay, so we have introduced variables. Okay. Now we're going to get into conditional statements. Okay? So, remember I said, people have tried to make programming look as much like an English, statement as possible, as is reasonable. So, what we could do, this statement here is basically, this form is exactly how the form is in code, except it's a little more Englishy. Okay, so for example, if some condition is met, do this, right? Else, so if that condition wasn't true, else, if some other condition is true, then do something else. And then finally, if both of those aren't true, then just do this final thing. Okay? So, you could give this instruction set to a human. Right? So you could say, if it's, let's say I ask you to feed my dog, take care of my dog. So I say, if it's the morning time, go for a walk. Else, if it's afternoon, play fetch. If it's nighttime, refill the water bowl. Something like that. Okay? So, obviously computers can't do make sense of high-level instructions like fill the water bowl, right? But we can do things like a certain message can appear when some conditions are true, or another message can appear if it's not true, right? Like you successfully logged in, or password incorrect, try again. A computer could definitely do that, no problem. Okay, you've seen it. So this is actual, not the part in the brackets, but the actual if, else. That is basically what conditional statements will look like in JavaScript. And we're gonna actually write some. Okay, so this is actual JavaScript now. Okay, so what we're doing here. So what's the first thing we're doing? Var D. What's that? What are we doing? Just on this side of the equal sign. What are we doing? We're declaring a variable, right? We're saying I want a variable called D. Okay, so we're reserving a little bit of memory somewhere in our computer. Now this on the right side, that's a little advanced, but so date is an object. Remember last week I talked about objects, and we could access things inside objects, right? So I said if I'm the object Carmen, you could say Carmen.arm, and then you could say Carmen.arm.hand.finger, right? It's sort of, there's this hierarchy of things that go down. So here, what we're going to put in D is an object called date, okay? And date comes with a whole bunch of functions that will do a number of things related to the date. So we could get today's date, we could get the day of the week, we could get the current time, we could do all these things. So on the second line, we're declaring another variable called time. Okay? And then, so using the variable here, so see D and D is the same. So first we created an object in D, and now we're using it. So we're saying D.getHours. That's like saying Carmen.arm. Right? We're accessing something inside the object. Okay? So then time is stored an actual number. Okay? Let's try this. Let's actually write this up and see what happens. So let's go back here, and so let's do that. Let's say var D equals date, or new date, right? New date. And I think it was capital D. Yeah. Okay. So now let's run our with our JavaScript console. Let's rerun our program with our breakpoint. So see here, I'm going to put a breakpoint right here and get rid of this one. Okay, and then I'm going to hit continue. Oh, why didn't it stop? Oh, okay. And now I'm going to go 1 over. So now we can inspect D. And so what it's showing us is, so an object is like a complex variable. So remember when I highlighted over here, string 3, it just gave me a simple value. Or here, 1. But now D is a complex variable with many, many things inside. So if we open this up, these are all the functions that we have access to inside that object. Okay? So this function here, getDate, okay? That's going to return a date. So let's try that. Or so what? Actually, in my example, what did I have? getHours. Okay? So let's create a variable. Oh, actually, I always make this mistake. You cannot write code in the JavaScript console. I always do that. So minimize, make sure you're typing in your text editor, in Dreamweaver, or whatever you use. Okay? So, now my example is not using best practice. What about this line is not the best? But I already mentioned it. What about, yes? Yes. So we could, oh, what? Get on over. So yeah, we could call it lowercase date, or something like the date, or something like that. So let's change that. Okay. Now what we're going to do, so we're going to create another variable called hours. Okay, and that is going to equal the date, right? And now, but just like we don't want Carmen, we want the arm of Carmen. We don't want the date, we want the hours. Okay? So I think in Dreamweaver, does it give you the suggestion? It does, right? Okay, excellent. So I'm using Notepad, so it doesn't, but Dreamweaver, it should pop up a list of everything that you can use. Okay? So the one that we want, the one that's in our example, is getHours. Okay? So we're going to getHours. Okay? So now let's alert. I'm going to move my alert box, and I'm going to alert hours. Okay? So let's see what the value of hours is. $19. Okay? Because it's 7. It works 24 hours. Okay? So as the time changes, that number is going to change. Okay? So this, right now, what we're doing, I think, is we're creating our first dynamic web page. So this web page will display something different depending on the time of day that you access it. Okay? That is by definition, a dynamic web page. So let's go back, and we'll comment out our alert for now, because we don't want that popping up. We don't need it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get to the meat of our lesson, which is the conditional statement. Okay? So what we do is we use the keyword if. Okay? So let's say we want to say, what's our example say? So it's just a message like, okay, so if it's the morning, so we're going to say if hours. Okay? And now what we can do is we can use, so there's a couple of symbols we can use. This is back to math, right? So what would this mean? Less than. What does this mean? Greater than. What does this mean? No, equals. So, okay, here's the thing. Here I used 1 equal sign. Here I'm using 2. You use 1 equal sign when you want to assign a value. You use 2 equal signs when you want to compare 2 values. Okay? That's a common mistake a lot of people make. Okay? What about this? What does that mean? Not equal. Good. Good. Okay. So let's use less than. Okay? Still in my head, I have to imagine the gator eating the larger value, right? Okay. So if hour, so let's say I want to have a message, a good morning message. So what should I put on the other side of this less than symbol? Yeah, 12. Right? So anytime before noon. Okay? So then I close off, so I have if, and then in brackets I have my conditional statement. Okay? Now, directly under that statement, just like in CSS, we're going to create two squiggly braces, two squiggly brackets. Okay? So what that means is anything between these brackets will only be run if this statement is true. Okay? So this actually will resolve to true, right? See how true is a keyword, is a key value, or false. So you could put, if true, you could put it in there. It's always going to run, but you could do that. Okay? Okay. So we're going to say if hours less than 12, then let's alert, let's say, top of the morning to ya. Okay? Save. Now, if we run this, what's going to show up? Nothing. Nothing will show up. Because what's the value of hours going to be? So it's getting the current hour of right now, which is 7 p.m., which is, what was it, 19? 19. So is 19 less than 12? Is that true or false? False. So this statement does not get run. It skips over it. Okay? Okay. Now, let's do the next step. So now we'll say else if. So if the first one isn't true, let's check another condition. So now what we're going to do, we're going to combine two statements. Okay? So let's come back to the conditional statement. So we'll put our curly braces here, and I want to say something like good afternoon. Okay? So let's say between the hours of noon and 4, I want this message to be displayed. So there's actually two ways we could do it. But what we're going to do, we can combine Boolean statements using ands and ors. So think back to your, maybe you've learned this, or maybe this is just intuitive. But let's quickly go through some Boolean math. So true and true equals true. True and false equals false. False and false equals false. False or true equals. Just think about it this way. If I said, this mouse is 1,000 pounds, or it's black, is that true or false?
False.
No, that's true. It's black.
But it's not 1,000 pounds.
I know. I said or. I said this mouse is either 1,000 pounds or it's black. Is that true? Yeah. This mouse is 1,000 pounds and it's black. That's false. Okay? How about, so true or true equals true. True and true equals true. Okay? So just think it's intuitive. You can think about it intuitively. Okay? So we're going to so ands or ors. So the way we have JavaScript is we use double ampersand for and, or double bar for or. So first of all, so we want the value to be between two values. So do we need to use and or or? And. Because, so two things need to be true, right? So let's say, so if something is, let's say if a number is between 1 and 10, right? That means it's both greater than 1 and less than 10. Right?
Yes.
So we can't do that with an or. We can't describe something as being between something with an or. Right? So what we're going to say if ours is greater than what? 12. And ours is what? Because we want it to be equal to 12? But how can something be greater than and equal to? That'll always be false. So, you had it right. What were you saying? Ours is
Less than 4.
less than 4. Exactly. You got it. That's it. So, oh no, not 4. Sorry. Yeah, 16. You meant 4 p.m., but 16. Yeah. Yeah. So, is 13 greater than 12 and less than 16? Is that true or false? That's true. Is 11 greater than 12 and less than 16? Is that true?
Yes.
11 is greater than 12?
No.
No, it's not. It's
But
false.
it's less than 6.
But it has to be, you have to meet both conditions.
Okay. Oh, we're right. And not the or.
If it's and, then both sides of the and have to be true. If either side is false, then the whole statement is false. It's like when you multiply by 0, kind of. Right? False is kind of like 0, in that it overrides a lot of the time. So, what's that? Okay. But you can... okay, so no more analogy. So I'm going to speak in specifics now. So will this run? Given that the hour that was returned was 19. So is 19 less than 12 and more than 12 and less than 16? That is false. Okay, so now what we can do is we can do just one final condition. So we'll say else and then our curly braces. So in this case, we don't give it a condition. We don't give it a condition. And then here we'll just say alert, good night. So what's our little script going to display?
It's going to say good day.
Yep.
But, I mean, like it's 5, what if it's like 5 o'clock, right? It's still going to say good night.
That is true.
You can change it to evening. You don't have to say goodnight.
So
You only add 3 conditions.
no,
So you can keep going.
you can do as many as you want.
So, well, it says else, because you're doing if, and then else if, and then else.
You can have, well, okay, so here's how, you can only have one else.
Okay, that's the final.
That's the final condition. So here's the thing about if and else if. You can have as many ifs and as many else ifs as you want. Okay, so if it's just if, it will check all the conditions. Okay? If it's if, then else if, else if, else if, else if. As soon as it finds a true, it doesn't look at the rest of them. Okay? So if you have if hours is less than 12, if that one's true, it doesn't check the other ones. It doesn't check, it skips over all of this. But if I get rid of this else, it'll check this one and check this one. And if then, so this here kind of exists on its own. And this is sort of together. So if it's not if, it'll do this. And this one will it'll check just in isolation. Okay? So you can have as many ifs or else ifs as you want. Right? So you can, and so this is how you essentially give your program intelligence. Okay? So, really the way of kind of creating intelligence now is to just have millions of these ifs. And you can have nested ifs, so you can have an if inside an if, inside an if, inside an if, inside an if. And that's the same thing as joining them with ands and ors. Okay? Okay. So, we have a half an hour. I think I'm going to show you loops, and then next week I will show you the assignment stuff that you'll require for the assignment. So that's another reason why the assignment's not assigned this week. Oh, so go to Chrome. Click on the stripey thing, the menu, and then go down here to Tools, and then click on JavaScript Console. Or you could just do Control-Shift-J. Control-Shift-J will hide it. Explorer won't have it. They might have their own thing. Maybe the new version does, but Firefox does and Chrome does. You used to need a third-party plugin to do this, but they've caught on. They've realized writing JavaScript used to be such torture. It is, even now it's a little painful, but it was just so hard to debug because there were no tools. Like, see, I was showing you how to step through the code. You couldn't do that. So you know how you would debug is use alert boxes to pop up the values. And so in order to kind of get the program flow, you'd put these strategically placed alert boxes like, okay, I'm here, now I'm here, now I'm here. Oh, okay, well, you couldn't step through it. Now the tools are available. It makes your life a little easier. Okay, so I'm going to show you one final concept, and then we'll, I don't want to overwhelm you, so I'll give you the rest of the night off. So again, the assignment, I've posted it, but it's not due for 2 weeks. Okay, it's not due next week. You won't be able to do it. So don't worry about it. Okay.
Thanks for the comments.
Well, no, you can't. You could possibly, but I haven't taught you. I mean, Okay. Not that I'm the only source of. I know. Okay. So the final thing we need to learn about. This is the thing that. So between if statements and loops, that is basically how you program. Really. The other, you'll need to learn more syntax and different ways of doing different kinds of loops. But essentially, the things I've told you. Exactly. Loops are the workhorse of programming. Okay. So if you ever find yourself doing something on a computer that's very repetitious and boring and time-consuming, there is probably a really easy way to make a computer do it. Okay? That's what computers are good at. Doing repetitive things very, very quickly and very, very accurately. Okay? Human beings suck at doing that. We're horrible. I make mistakes all the time like that. What I'm good at, and I think most people are good at, is high-level thinking. Right? Thinking about objects. This object goes over here. Or this thing moves up and down, right? We're not good at doing math. That's why, most games, they're fun, because they're making us do things we're not very good at, right? Like, Sudoku and stuff. A computer could do that in half a second. But we're really poor at it. It takes us a long time, and so it's kind of fun for us, right? But at your job, you don't want to do that. You need to get it to be done, okay? So loops are a way of really harnessing the power of computing. So a lot of times you'll run into these instances where you want to run basically the same block of code over and over and over and over and over again. Right? And so instead of writing the same lines and copying and pasting and copying and pasting and copying and pasting and going down and killing your hand and your keyboard, all you do is you create a loop statement and say, okay, I want this block of code to be run 100 times. And it'll do it. Okay? So, there are two main loops, two types of loops, not only in JavaScript, but in all programming. Okay? And essentially they do the exact same thing. It's just the syntax is set up a little bit differently to support one usage over another. Okay? So for loops you use for loops when you pretty much know how many times you want to loop. Okay? So let's say I have a data structure that holds my class list. And let's say I have 1,000 students in my list, right? We're at some first year psych course at U of T. There's 1,000 students, okay? I want to search through that list for, let's say I want to see if there's any Johns in my class. Anybody named John. So I could get some paper and I could look through and I could look for Johns. Myself, as a human, I could do that. I could go through. It would take me a really long time and I would probably miss a lot of Johns. So I'd make mistakes. So what I could do is I could program a loop. I could say, loop, so I have 1,000 students, and I have one line that would say, is this student named John? Right? One line, and I'd put a loop, and I'd say, do that 1,000 times, and every time you loop, just go to the next student. Okay, so I'd run that loop. That's 3 lines of code, right? The line that defines the loop, then you're looking at each student as you loop through, and then maybe something to do to that student. Okay? And so that's only 2 or 3 lines of code that'll look through your list really, really fast and spit out your answer. Okay? So it only took you a little bit of coding, and the computer just did it. Okay? So for loops you use when you're pretty certain the number of times. So I have 1,000 students. I want to do something 1,000 times, so I'm going to use a for loop. The other type of loop is called a while loop. And you use a while loop when you're not really sure how many times you want to loop. Right? So let's think of an example. When might you want to do that? Let me think of an easy example of when you might want to use a while loop. Okay, so what you could do is, let's say you were creating a login system. So what you could do is you'd put in let's say you have a line of code that prompts for the username. Okay? And it gets the username and then it checks to see if it's valid. So theoretically, you don't know how many times it's going to take for someone to type in a valid name. And you want them to keep trying. So you would probably use a while loop for something like that. Okay, so let's have a look here. Okay. So let's I find examples a little bit easier. So let's do that. So let's start with a for loop. Okay, so the way we create a for loop is we use the keyword for. Okay, and then we create it's sort of like an if statement. So we create our brackets, our rounded brackets, and then we're going to create our curly braces. And so just like our if statement, anything in the curly braces is part of the loop's iteration. So every time the loop iterates, it'll run whatever code is in here. Okay? Okay. So what we so there's 3 things we need to put in our for loop. 3 things. So the first thing is we need to define a variable. And this is the only time in programming where you're allowed to use a single letter variable name, is in for loops. Okay? So we call our variable I. Okay? And then we also initiate our variable to a value, usually 0. Okay? Then we have a semicolon. And then what we do is we put in a conditional statement. Okay? And what this means is while this condition is true, your loop will keep looping. So what we'll say is you could read this in your head like this. You could say, while I is less than 10, keep looping. Then we have another semicolon. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tell it what to do to I every time you loop. So what we'll say is we're going to say I equals I plus 1. Okay? So, how many times do you think this, this code here, how many times is that going to run? So remember I said we're declaring our counter variable. We're setting the value, so it starts off at 0. Okay? And we're going to keep looping while I is less than 10. And every time we go through the loop, we're going to add 1 to I. 10 times. Exactly. Yeah. Okay? So, what if we did this? So what if I said, what can we do here? So let's say we'll take our variable x and let's set it to be 1. Okay? And over here I say this, x equals x plus 1. And I'm going to alert my x. So here's the million-dollar question. What will the value of x be? So the value of x starts at 1. Okay, so let's loop through the loop in our minds. Okay, so we start up here. We give the value of x, or the variable x, we give it a value of 1. Okay, we can basically skip everything else. Let's go down here. So we come to this line, x equals 1. Okay? We come in here, we give I equals 0. Okay? So let's do this. Oops. Oh, shit. Okay. So x equals 1 and I equals 0. Okay? So we come in, we're going to say loop while I is less than 10. So I is 0. Is 0 less than 10? Yes. So this condition is true, so we're going to do a loop. So we're going to do one. So we need to increase I by 1. Okay? So I is now going to equal 1. So now we're going down here. So x is equal to 1. So x is now equal to x, which is 1, plus 1, which is 2. So the new value of x is 2. Okay? Now we're going to hit this brace, and we're going to come back up, because this is true. We're going to run this again. So now I equals 1. Is 1 less than 10? Yes. So we're going to do another iteration. So now we're going to have to add 1 to I. I now equals 2. Okay? X now equals 2. So now x, which is 2, so x equals x, which is 2, plus 1, which is 3. So the new value of x, 3. Okay? So keep doing that 9 more times. We're going to have, well, actually, it's going to be 11, because we started with 1 and then added 10 ones. So let's try it. Yep.
Why did it connect x with I? Is it because it's confused?
No, the only reason why... Well, okay, so I is just... It's just because I'm doing the same thing, but I could also do this. I could say x times 5. Now it's going to multiply 1, well... Yeah, it's going to be 5, 20. It's going to multiply by 5 times, right? So, but I is still increasing by 1 every time. So, whatever you put in here is totally arbitrary. It's not related to I at all. The I is just meant as a counter to keep track of your loop. Okay? Okay. So now let's try this. That's basically 5 to the power of 10. Let's see what that is. It's going to be a big number. Is that 9 million? 9 million. 9.7 million. Okay? Pretty quick. So let's see that. Let's see just how fast a loop is. So let's do this. Let's make, we'll change this back to 1. And let's make this 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million. Let's do 10 million. Okay, let's see how long 10 million iterations take. Now, and this is just adding. Know that if you add more stuff, it's going to take more time. So let's see. That's fast. Now, mind you, this is pretty much the simplest thing you can do, right? Just adding 1. So, you know, it's fast, right? Much faster than you and much more accurate. Okay? Computers don't get bored. They don't get distracted. They're better at these things than we are. Okay? And that's the power of them. Okay, let me... Okay, let me show you the assignment, because I want to show you where I'm going with all this, just so you kind of understand where we're eventually headed to. So I'm just going to quickly show you the assignment, which again I'll change the due date. Okay. So again, I have to go at 8 today, which is in about 10 minutes, so I can do my civic duty. Although this election kind of sucks this year, man. You know? Like, I really considered not voting this year. It's like really crossed my mind. I guess.
Only if you can write on the ballot. I'm confused. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to change the due date. The due date to where's the due date? Due date to the 26th. When's the last class for this class? 31st? Okay. Okay. So, this is where we're going to head to. And I think we might have some time just to maybe get started. But so, you're going to use your submission from the last assignment. So you get 1 mark for that. So you're going to add a new page and a new link to your navigation bar. That's 1 mark. You know, this stuff you can do. Then you're going to create a form that is appropriate for signing up a new user to your site. Okay? So, things like username, first name, last name, email, password, etc. 5 marks. Okay? So, we'll have to go back. Was it last week we learned, did we just start forms last week? Yeah, we looked at forms. So, you can look at last week's lesson. So, then create a JavaScript file and link it to your HTML file. Okay, easy enough. So, this is where it gets a little difficult. So, you're going to create a form validation script in JavaScript. Okay? It should do the following. So, it should make sure a value has been entered in for the first name. So it should make sure that something's been entered in for the first name. Okay? It should make sure that a value is entered in for the last name. That's almost the same thing. Okay? Now, you should make sure that the password exists or has a value and is at least 8 characters. Okay? You want to make sure the email address has both an @ symbol and a dot in it. And if any of these conditions are met, the form should not submit. Okay? So that whole second part, I haven't shown you how to do yet. Okay? But I will. It's not that difficult. It's not that hard. Okay? You've learned the All that you're missing are some of the JavaScript specific functions. But as of now, if you understand variables, ifs, you don't even need loops for this. You just need variables and ifs. You can do this, right? So let's just think. How would you make sure that there's a value in a form field? Yeah.
So if you say if first name
Yeah.
is not equal to null,
Yeah.
then you can also
Perfect. So that's not exactly correct for JavaScript, but the semantics is dead on. It's correct. It's just I just have to teach you the specific JavaScript. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Because really, what's important is understanding the semantics. If you understand the flow of the program, the logic of the program, then teaching the syntax is easy. And the thing is there's so many different languages, and no matter what you do, you may not use JavaScript. It may be ActionScript, or it might be C#, or it might be Java, or it might be anything. And if you know the semantics and the logic, learning new syntax is easy. It's literally looking something up on Google that's how you do a loop in Java, or that's how you do, or that's, even now, probably for me to do this, I would have to do a bit of Googling, right? Because what I couldn't probably quite remember is the exact syntax on how to get, because what you want to do is get the value from the form field into a variable, which is sort of what we did last week, but we printed that variable, or the value, to an alert box, right? Remember if we looked at an example from last week, or we changed my example now. Shoot, yeah, I got rid of all this, but yeah, last week we went document.forms, and then we said my form, and then first name dot value, and we alerted that. So now what you're going to do is store that in a variable, and then we can do a conditional statement based on that variable. And so what I would do is, it probably wouldn't be null. What I would do is check how many characters are in there, and there's a function to do that, and I'll show you that function. How to do it. That's the JavaScript specific stuff that you need to know. Okay? But so over this week, between now and next week when we actually learn this, so let the ifs, loops, and variables, let those concepts sink down. I have some more videos on my channel looking at that stuff in a little more detail. It's talking about C#, but it's basically the same thing. Okay? So make sure you understand variables, ifs, and loops. Okay? Because so next week I'll show you the stuff you need to do the assignment, and then we'll probably have a little bit of time maybe to get started on some high-level design. Right? So I'll take you down right to the bottom, and then we'll kind of pop back up and look at things from a bird's eye view. Sure. Yep. Okay, so that's all I have for you guys today. So you can take a look. You can get started on the first half of the assignment anyways. And then next week, again, I might be a little bit late, but 3.5 hours should be enough time to get back from London. So unless there's an accident or something, I should be here on time. Okay, so hopefully there isn't. Let's just zip all this up to add to, okay. So this is Programming Essentials. Okay. And where do we? Oh, I posted up a bunch of more PowerPoint slides that are basically reflective of my lectures. But if so, so I have video for those of you who are audio video, and I have text for text, if that's the mode you prefer. What am I doing here? I'm uploading a document. Yes, so I want to build a content. Oh, and we'll stop the recording.